Hello, and welcome to the video where I talk about my worst reading month of the entire year. Yay, go me! So December ended up being a terrible, terrible reading month for me. Like the worst one I had in 2019. So not the way that I wanted to end 2019, but the way that I did end 2019. I mean, okay, in my personal life, it was absolutely the way that I wanted to end 2019. I ended up getting engaged, and if you watched my January TBR video, I talked about that. I got engaged! I'm very excited, if you couldn't tell. We've been together for 9.5 years, and it finally happened. So because of that, that pretty much took over my life, and I put reading aside, and I put my YouTube channel aside, and I didn't post much, and I didn't film much, and I didn't read much. Okay, so this entire month, I read 1 physical book and 2 audiobooks. Yeah. So the first audiobook that I listened to was The Immortalist by Chloe Benjamin, and I thought this was okay. It's a literary fiction novel. It is about these 4 siblings that when they're little, they go see this fortune teller, and she gives them all their death date. And it is about like their lives and how they end up living their lives and like what happens, and you follow each sibling up until they die, and you start with the one who's going to die first, and then you go through from there. It was okay. I've heard that it was amazing. I've heard really great things about it, but it's not a book that's going to stick with me. It's not a book that in a couple years from now I will ever think of. I think it could have been much better. I think the premise was really interesting. I really wish we had gotten more into that idea of like fate and destiny versus free will, but that really wasn't touched on much at all. I really did like the first sibling story. However, it was really predictable. Like you knew as soon as he made one choice, like that how he was going to die. It wasn't up in the air at all. Like I think it could have been better. I think I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, but it was a bit of a disappointment. The cover is really beautiful, and I really hate when books don't live up to the cover. All right, the next audiobook that I listened to was The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware, and this is a thriller. I actually really enjoyed this. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know the premise. I didn't know anything about it. It's about this woman who agrees to be this nanny for this family who live in the middle of nowhere in Scotland. She's watching their 3 girls, Petra, who is a toddler, Maddie, who was 8, and Ellie, who was 5. And then they have a teenager daughter who comes home on the weekends. Both of the parents are architects, and they have to travel all over and go to like different conferences and work on different projects and things like that. So she's a live-in nanny, and she doesn't really know quite what she's getting into. This story starts off telling us that she is in jail for murdering one of the girls. You don't know which girl, you don't know what's happened, and this is like a letter written to an attorney asking him to represent her, which I thought was a really interesting format for a book. I really did enjoy that. I didn't expect some of the plot twists. I didn't expect the ending. So overall, for me, it was a good thriller. I don't really have high expectations for thrillers. It kept me on my toes. I wasn't completely engaged in the story, which is why I wouldn't give it 5 out of 5. Like, I didn't feel like I had to stay up and listen to it. Like usually when I get really into an audiobook, I like find myself cleaning and doing other jobs so that I can listen. And I didn't have that, but I was engaged and I did want to know what happened. So I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. And the only physical book that I read for the entire month of December was The Magicians by Lev Grossman. I had thought that I would read the entire series, and there are 2 more books, and I didn't get to them. And because this took me, like I finished this last night. I'm filming this on December 31st, and I finished this at midnight. So technically today, like, this literally took me the entire month. So I didn't read the other 2 books, and I didn't read Carols and Chaos, which I had also planned on reading. Not because I didn't want to, but because this one was just taking me so long. So this book put me in a pretty bad reading slump for the month just because it is really boring in the beginning. Like the last 100 pages were really good and it really had me intrigued. And I like if the whole book was like the last 100 pages, then I think it could be really, really good, but it wasn't. So you follow this guy named Quentin Coldwater, and he grows up in Brooklyn, and he's read these books that take place in this magical world called Fillory, and he's read these books his entire life, and he's really interested, and he's like obsessed with them. He rereads and rereads, and he like really wants a world full of magic. One day he happens to walk through this garden and comes out in upstate New York, and he discovers that magic does exist, and he's admitted into this elite magical school in upstate New York, and he goes there for 4 years. So pretty much we follow his schooling for most of this book. We follow his journey at Breakbill's Magical Academy, and nothing happens. Like in 4 years, there's like one event that happens, and the other things are just like, I'm at school, woohoo! And it's just like, really? I don't know if it's because they needed to like set this for the rest of the series or what, but to spend 300 pages just following him at school, I was just like, when is this going to end? And then the last 100 pages did make up for it. I think I'm going to give this 2.5 out of 5 stars, just because I really did not enjoy the beginning. I am, however, really intrigued now, and I want to know more. I want to know what's going to happen in the next book. I am definitely going to keep reading, but I'm not going to pick it up right away. I need a bit of a break. I need to read a couple other things. Maybe I will pick it up during January, because my January TBR is relatively short, so maybe I'll pick up the second book. My brother recommended this series to me, and so I really do want to keep reading it. He said the third book is actually his favorite, which that never happens. Like typically the best book in the series is the first one, and then they like get worse from there. And so for me to know that it gets better is keeping me intrigued. Like I want to see where it goes. I want to see what else can happen, and I know he can do a really great job telling a story because he did that in the last 100 pages. So I want to see what else happens. And then maybe I will watch the show too. I hear the show was way better than the book. I read like last night when I finished it, I went on Goodreads and I read like 15 or 20 reviews of it, and people were like, yeah, don't even read this, just watch the show because the show is so much better. So now that I have read this, I definitely do want to pick up the show and see what that was about. But yeah, so this is what I read during the month of December. It happens. It was my worst reading month, but I had a lot going on in my personal life, and you know, that's the way it goes. At least I hit my Goodreads challenge goal though. Like, high five to me, because like, yeah, I hit that challenge. So alright, so thank you so much for watching this. If you like my video and you like my content, please subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it. I will be back for a bookish video soon. As always, keep reading.